Hello, everybody.
Hey, dear ones, hi for today.
Yep. So, and today is, well, I don't know when you're going to be watching it, but in real time, I guess that's what they call it. It's Palm Sunday today, 2024. Um, Beautiful day here in Dayton, Ohio. Unfortunately, we didn't make it to church, and it was a wonderful service. Our pastor told the whole story of Oscar Romero. It was an introduction to the story of Jesus. Triumphal entry and looking around the temple when he came in. It was really, really meaningful and powerful. So anyway, there's a couple little short things about us, because I know some of you said we feel like you. And anyway, just a little bit about us. We earlier this month, the very beginning of March, Tom and I went on a cruise to Honduras and Mexico. Neither of us had ever been on a cruise before. I'm not sure we'll ever be on one again, but it was, it was quite a luxurious adventure for us. And what was really special was we went with two beloved family members, Tom's son and his wife. So it was a wonderful time. But among the several little souvenirs we brought home, I brought home that I'm not very happy about, which was influenza A. So the day after we got home, I got very, very sick, and I'm still, recovering from that. So anyway, we're glad to be with you. And the story we have is a timeless story, a wonderful story, resurrection story, which we're really happy to have. So,
Just leaves us speechless.
yes, it leaves me speechless, but hopefully it won't leave Tom speechless, because he's going to tell it for us. Ready, Tom?
This is the story on the first day of the week, while it was still dark. Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and found the stone rolled away from the tomb. And she ran and came to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, and she said to them, "They have taken my Lord, and I don't know where they've laid him." And so Simon Peter and the other disciple went out to the tomb, and they were running together. But the other disciple outran Peter and got there first, and he bent down and looked into the tomb, and he saw the linen wrappings, but he didn't go in. Then Simon Peter came, and he went right in. And when and he saw the linen wrappings and the napkin, the cloth that had been over Jesus' feet, or over Jesus' head, wrapped up, folded up, lying in a place all by itself. And then the other disciple came in, and he saw, and he believed. And they did not yet understand the scripture that he must be raised from the dead. And they went back to their homes. Now, Mary Magdalene stood outside the tomb, weeping. And as she wept, she bent down and looked in, and she saw two angels in white sitting, one at the head and one at the feet of where the body of Jesus had been laid. And they said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" And she said, because they have taken my Lord, and I don't know where they've laid him." And she turned around, and she saw Jesus standing there, but she didn't recognize that it was Jesus. And he said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom do you seek?" And thinking that he was the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you've taken him, please tell me where you have laid him, and I'll take care of him. And he said to her, Mary. And she said, Rabboni, which in Hebrew means teacher. And he said to her, don't hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go and tell my brothers that I am going ahead of them to Galilee, and there they will see me. For I have, for I'm ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. And so Mary went and found the disciples and said to them, they've taken the Lord, and I don't know. No. I've seen the Lord.
There we go.
And she told them that he had said these things to her.
Great. Thank you, Tom. And
Oh, boy.
we got a little bit of Mark's version in there too about going ahead to Galilee, but
Yeah,
we got the ascending in. Well, however, wonderful story from the Gospel of John. Thank you.
We'll make it human.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. There is a lot of action in this story. There's a lot of running back and forth from the tomb to the houses, back to the tomb to the houses. But Mary, and it's kind of like two parts of the story, really. There's a part about Peter and the other disciple, and then there's a part about Mary at the tomb. But she's sort of present throughout the whole story. She kind of begins and ends the story. So that's really significant, I think. So at the very beginning, then she tells the disciples that she goes to the tomb, and let's see, that she sees that the stone's been rolled away. It doesn't really say that she looked in and found it empty, but she sees a stone rolled away. So then she goes and tells Peter and this other disciple about that. How do you think? I mean, what's in her head? What is she thinking has happened, and how then is she feeling as she goes to the disciples? What is she wanting them to do?
Well, she's convinced. Her response is that they have taken the Lord, and that they have stolen Jesus' body, and that he's no longer there, and that they have now, they don't know where they've taken him. And so she's panicked, and she doesn't know what to do. And so Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, ran out to the tomb.
Well, but why? I mean, was this something that happened? Why would she think somebody took the body? Were there grave robbers, or was there
There was such a thing as grave robbers, yes. It wasn't frequent, but it did happen. And so that's the probability, is that she thought that they had stolen his body.
Seems like there was another, maybe it's the Gospel of Matthew, where they put guards outside the tomb because they're afraid the disciples will steal the body. And
right.
Okay, but that's not in John, right?
Nope, that's not in John. That's Matthew.
Okay, all right. All right, so Mary comes to the, now you mentioned the disciple whom Jesus loved. The other disciple, the disciple whom Jesus loved. Do we know who that is? Has that been referenced before? I think it was at the cross. I don't know.
Oh, yes, it's been referenced several times. The implication is that the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, had a personal relationship with this story that was distinctive, and that this disciple was the one who was telling the story. And so there's a kind of telling the story with this imposition, not imposition, this implication in the background that this is the one who's telling the story.
So he and Peter run to the tomb. There's a lot of detail about the running and who goes first and who goes in first and
Yeah.
and what they see inside the tomb. Talk about all of that detail a little bit, if you would.
Well, it is a further continuation of the implication that the other disciple was the one who was there and that he knew all this stuff. And so the detail of the who ran, that the other disciple outran Peter, kind of a guy thing. But then all the detail about, that the other disciple, looked in but didn't go in. Simon Peter did. And then of what he saw, that he saw the linen wrappings, and then this cloth that had been over Jesus' head, rolled up all by itself and over in another part of the tomb. And so the implication is that something took the body and very neatly and very carefully put the cloth over in another part of the tomb. Mm-hmm. So it was not something that was a quick run, get him out of there in haste. This was something done with care, and the implication is again that they stole his body.
Then after that description of what they did see and what they didn't see, the narrator says that they believed.
He believed.
He believed.
The other disciple came in then after Peter had come in and he saw all this. Then the other disciple came in and he saw and he believed.
Well, what did he believe?
Well, we don't know yet. The assumption, because it's such a loaded word, is that he believed that he was raised from the dead. But that is then
kind of contradicted
made it clear that statement. Right. But that wasn't the case. And that what he believed, then the implication is that he believed Mary Magdalene and believed that the body had been stolen. And so the implication of the story, if you think about it, so this is an interaction between the storyteller and the listeners for them to figure out what is he talking about. And he's talking about that he believed. What did he believe? He believed they had stolen the body and then he explains, they didn't understand yet the scripture that he must be raised from the dead. So they didn't make the connection between his body not being there and his being raised. So it involves the audience in thinking and in trying to figure out what is going on. And the ambiguity of that is made even greater by the final statement that they went back to their homes. If they had seen an empty tomb and concluded that Jesus had been raised from the dead, they wouldn't have just gone to their homes. They would have run back and told the other disciples the way that Mary did. So the implication of this is that Peter and the other disciple believed Mary. And then
believed that the body had been taken.
Right.
And they're maybe afraid, which is later in this chapter, we learn how afraid they are. So,
right.
Yeah. So that would, but I was reflecting on this a little bit, trying to figure it out. And it what crossed my mind was, it makes me wonder, do we really understand the scripture? We celebrate the resurrection on Easter and theoretically on every, Sunday, but do we really understand what the implications of God raising Jesus from the dead are? Do we really believe, and do we really understand? I don't know, how do we understand that? So it's good.
Right. So it is left in this first encounter with the tomb with an ambiguity.
Yeah.
What happened? We still don't know what happened. Still don't know what they believed. And clearly they didn't believe that he had been raised because they wouldn't have gone back to their homes as if everything was more or less normal.
Well, and they'd be grieving, I'm sure.
They'd be grieving, but they're not celebrating. They're not going back to celebrate that Jesus was raised to new life.
Right. Okay, so Mary's apparently has been there this whole time because she's still there weeping at the tomb.
After the disciples had left and went back to their homes.
So apparently she, when they ran there, she also went there and she's there. And now you have the second part of the story.
Right.
She sees angels, right?
Right.
When she looks in, the men didn't see any angels, but she did, and they speak to her.
Right.
And then Jesus asked the same question. Why are you weeping? Right.
Right.
And then he also asks, whom do you seek? She thinks he's a gardener. She's still in her head. Somebody's taken the body.
And she assumes then that it's the gardener who took his body. And so she asks the gardener, please tell me where you've laid him and I'll take care of him. Yep.
And what is it that helps her finally recognize Jesus?
It's Jesus' voice. Yeah. And, one of the challenges of telling this story is how do you say this word of Jesus, Mary? Mary? Mary. I don't know. So that's one of the things that you have to decide as the storyteller is, how did Jesus sound?
Right.
What was the character of his voice? And so it's a wonderful ambiguity. So
and then he says, don't hold on to me. What are we picturing is happening there, and why might he be saying that?
Well, it's the clear implication is that Mary was holding him,
Embracing
was an embrace, and that is her response, as well as saying, Rabboni, teacher. So it's a very, I don't know, touching scene in two senses of the word touching, that she was holding him. And
he gives her some instructions to go to the disciples and tell them that he's going to ascend to the Father.
Right.
Your God and my God.
God. Right.
My God and your God. And so she does. And how do you, what's the significance of her doing that, and this whole story, really?
Yeah. Well, the implication is that she's amazed that he said these things to her. And this is often read as a kind of matter of fact thing, but it isn't that at all. It is, it's an expression at the end of this story of her amazement that she was chosen as the one to be told that Jesus was raised.
The first one to see the risen Christ.
Right. And that he had said these things to her. I've seen the Lord. Yep. So
that's a big deal because she's a woman, and
yes,
you would anticipate it'd be a man who would get that honor, right?
Right. Yep. Yes, clearly that's an implication of the story and of the way in which the storyteller told it, of this amazing development, and that it's amazing both because of how it has happened, but of course the main amazement is that the resurrection.
I do think it's important for people to notice that the very first witness to the resurrection and the first report of the resurrection came from a woman who loved Jesus. So I don't know how it was that the church decided that women weren't allowed to be leaders and preachers, and large parts of the church still have that policy, because it certainly seems from this story that clearly God and Jesus thought that a woman was perfectly capable of bearing witness to the resurrection of Jesus, that God did. It happened.
Right. Well, and not just capable, but the one who was chosen
Right.
for this
Right. Called.
this class,
Right.
this task.
Yeah.
And it's reflected in all four of the Gospels. So this is a tradition that has a broad foundation and is developed in various ways, but it is told as a kind of pervasive way in which this story of the resurrection is told, and it's different, each one. So it's Mary and Mary Magdalene and Salome, and it's the Mary and the other Mary. These, and Mary Magdalene and Joanna. So this story has a broad connection to a body of storytelling traditions in the ways that this narrative, this story, this event is told.
All right. Well, this is story for Easter Sunday. Before Easter Sunday, we have all the we have Holy Week, and I hope that you will have read or heard, prayed with, worshiped with the stories that lead up to the resurrection, because they make the resurrection story as meaningful as it is. And we wish you all a blessed Holy Week.
I'm just noticing, and over my shoulder, I have a picture that I got at a church in Rome, and it's of Jesus on the cross, but with doves on the cross. So it's a kind of crucifixion, resurrection symbol that I really love.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.